The Constitutional Court has reserved judgment in the application in which the IEC and a number of political parties and civil society organizations presented arguments on Friday. The Electoral Commission of South Africa argued that it was correct to approach the Constitutional Court to have the local government elections postponed, and that approaching Parliament would have set a bad precedent. To look now at what the impact on smaller parties will be should the elections be postponed. We're joined by Paul Berkowitz, who is Director at the Third Republic. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So you've been watching these events, especially what occurred on Friday. Is there an outcome from the court process that would be prejudicial against the smaller parties, and what is it?
An outcome, I don't know if we would say prejudicial, but definitely, because part of our work is with smaller parties and independent candidates. And they could definitely do with some more time to register and to campaign properly. It would be of benefit to them if a postponement were granted.
So what outcome would be to their disadvantage? Let's use that word then.
If the elections do go ahead on the original date of the 27th of October, then smaller parties and independents would be at a disadvantage. They don't have the resources of bigger parties. It's been incredibly difficult and close to impossible for anyone to campaign in the normal way. And we know from our work with some of our independent candidates that they haven't had time to reach their constituencies.
And that's what I wanted to talk about. I mean, it's a well-known fact, documented fact, that the smaller parties tend to perform a little less better during local government elections than at national. What is this as a result of? I want to look at campaign, for instance. It's been one of the major issues that some have been arguing on this particular issues. Would the parties still find themselves having to do this, whether elections are postponed or not? Would they have access to be able to campaign and reach the constituencies that they'd like to have vote for them, particularly in this highly politicized environment and before a majority of people are vaccinated?
It's going to be difficult either way, Tsepiso. There haven't been many election campaigns in the traditional sense because of lockdown restrictions. It's unlikely that anyone will get much momentum going. Best case scenario, if a postponement were to be granted to, say, February of 2022, as the Moseneke Commission recommended, then that would give some time, and ideally there'd be a period where physical campaigning could happen and candidates could present in real time, face-to-face with constituents. One of the reasons, in reply to your first question, Tsepiso, why I think many candidates and parties do better in national provincial elections is because of the nature of the electoral system, that they can campaign more widely and reach more people, even were they to campaign under such conditions. But for many of our candidates, for ward candidates in particular, the electoral system penalizes them in many ways, and they have to campaign in a very specific geographic area and focus their resources in that way.
And particularly independents, how are they affected? The thinking by some, for instance, is that the longer the delay in voting, the very thing that is being sought to avoid, trampling on the fundamental right to vote, may actually be realized. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, if we go back a couple of months, Tsepiso, we haven't had a single voter registration weekend from the IEC. We traditionally have 2 voter registration weekends before an election. So there is a large number, there's a potential pool of would-be voters that haven't had a chance to register, particularly new voters, young people between the age of 18 and 35. Those are traditionally under-registered as a percentage of their age cohort. So most of those voters, if not all, will be lost to the system without a registration weekend. And in that case, a postponement would make a difference were there to be a registration weekend in the next few months or whenever the election were postponed to. But without that, it's very difficult. It would favor the incumbents who've already got a relationship with those areas and those constituents who are registered and have voted before.
Okay, so finally, there's been the issue of legitimacy of the governing party and its mandate running out. How will this affect the political landscape should there be a postponement? And will there be an acceptance of the outcome from the Concord, do you think?
If you could rephrase possibly, Tsepiso, an acceptance of the outcome
of the Concord,
yes.
process, yes.
That the Concord would grant an extension,
yes.
if I understand your
yes.
question. Most of the parties are pushing for a postponement. There are one or two exceptions. The DA is the biggest party that is against a postponement. So many parties, big and small, independents, new parties, would welcome a postponement. The issue of legitimacy and the freedom and the fairness of the elections is something that is very difficult. We're in an invidious position. We've lost a lot of time. The organizations that were supposed to make changes in time and bring this to the attention, the IEC, COGTA, National Treasury, haven't done what they could have done in time, and we've run out of time. So whatever happens, there will be disappointments, and I think there will be criticisms and concerns that this will be the least free and fair election that we've held since '94.
Thanks for sharing your time and insights, Paul Berkowitz, Director of the Third Republic.